In YouTube Talk doesn't mean that you're paying anything. It's just like a bookmark in YouTube, so you can get to the channel really quickly once you've subscribed to it. And obviously, if you want to hit the bell icon when new videos are uploaded, you'll get notified. So that's all that means. So as I say, now it's time for our webinar, and I'd like to introduce Jackie Mitchell, a professional journalist and public relations consultant with over 15 years experience. She works with small businesses providing affordable PR and communication services. As a feature writer, she has worked on national newspapers, consumer magazines, trade publications, and websites in the UK, Australia, and New York and Hong Kong. As a public relations manager, she's worked with several, and my script's run out. So Jackie, sorry, over to you.
Several London West End PR agencies before setting up on my own.
So without further ado, let me introduce Jackie. And
okay, thank you. I'm just going to share my screen, and I think Rob is going to mute everyone, aren't you, Rob? You're going to record it, Rob, as well. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Jackie Mitchell, and I've got 20 minutes to tell you about how to use PR to generate more customers. Well, first of all, let's just see what would happen if a company did absolutely no PR at all. Well, imagine the scenario. You ring up a prospective customer and you tell them a bit about yourself, what your company does, and so on. And this person says, well, I'm sorry, I've never heard of you. I don't know anything about you. I don't know your company. I don't know what you do. Now, what was it you wanted to talk to me about? Why is PR so important? Well, it helps raise awareness for you and your business and what it does if it's carried out effectively over a long period of time. PR isn't one of those things that you switch off on and off like a tap. It needs to be done on a continuous basis. A lot of people think, well, I'll just set out a press release and then I'll get loads of coverage. It doesn't work like that. It needs to be carried out on over a long period of time, what we call the drip feed approach. It also helps with Google rankings because a journalist writes an article about you, and when somebody searches for your services, that article comes up in Google, and so it helps the rankings. It also helps your website because it drives people to the website. So at the time of the coverage, you can look up and see how many hits your website has got. It also helps with the social media platforms because in many cases, journalists will post the article on their social media platforms, which in turn will then help you to increase the number of Twitter followers and your Facebook likes and so on. It also opens up new markets because somebody writes an article about you online and somebody sees the article and then they contact you. It also helps you to win new business because if you're pitching for a new piece of business and that company has actually read about you or heard you on the radio, they've already know something about you before you even approach them. And also it can help with staff. Your existing staff reads an article about you, how fantastic the company is, it's won an award, it's done this, it's got this achievement. And they think, well, that sounds a really, really good, a good company that I'm working for there. And also it helps to recruit new ones. Staff will then read an article about a company and think, gosh, you know, that sounds a really, really good company. I'm going to apply. I'd like to work for them. And indeed, as Bill Gates said in his famous quote, if I was down to my last dollar, I'd spend it on public relations. So PR is part of the marketing mix. To make it totally effective, you need to dovetail it in with all your other marketing services. And by that, we mean the websites, Google Ads, the direct mail, virtual events, virtual exhibitions, all those sorts of things. You need to dovetail that into the mix, e-newsletters, websites and blogs. And you need to dovetail it in with all of those services to get the maximum effect. So how do we go about this? Well, it's very much the same approach as with a new business plan. So what are the objectives? What are the aims? What are you trying to achieve? And who are the people you're trying to target? Who is your target audience? And who are you trying to sell to? And what do they read? What do they access online? What do they watch? What do they listen to? And for a small business, the local newspaper is a very good way of getting noticed by the local community. Now, a lot of people say to me, well, actually, nobody buys a local paper anymore. Well, it depends on what your demographic is, because if it's an older person, chances are they will buy a local printed newspaper. And with COVID-19, many more people are now working from home, and so they want to know what's going on locally, so they might actually buy a local paper. And also many local papers are now doing home deliveries. But we're not just talking about a print publication here, because local papers will also have their website, and they'll also have their social media platforms and their e-newsletter. So that means that if you do have a piece of coverage in a printed publication, it will appear in all those platforms as well and reach a much larger audience. And indeed, the other important thing is that local papers are trusted more. So a YouGov survey said that the local paper was 3 times more trustworthy than social media because of the dangers of fake news. So if you're going to approach a journalist, the first point of contact from a journalist from any kind of media is going to be the press release. And when you think that they receive anything up to 1,000 a day, you need to make yours short, sweet, and to the point. And when I was a journalist, one of my jobs was to go through all the press releases and work out which ones we were going to use and which ones we were going to follow up. And the ones I used were always those that had the story in the first paragraph and had content relevant to the magazine I was working for. Now, I've put together some top tips of press release writing, and I think you've got a PDF handout which you could refer to. So I'm going to run through those tips. So first of all, is it newsworthy? Does it pass the so what test? Now, what I mean by that is if you had a headline saying Ray Palmer plays the guitar, you'd think, well, you know, so what? He just plays the guitar. But if you've got a story saying Ray Palmer wins award for the best guitarist in Surrey, that would be a lot more newsworthy. You need to also work out which media are you going to send this press release to. Is it consumer? Is it trade? Is it corporate? Because each one has its own style. So are you going to send it to like the grocer, a trade publication, Surrey Life, a lifestyle publication, the Reading Chronicle, a local newspaper, because each one will have their own style. Is it going to be chatty? Is it going to be formal? So you need to do your research and look at the publications online and see what sort of style they're going to have. As I've said before, you need to keep it short and sweet. Journalists are under pressure, working to tight deadlines, so they don't have a lot of time to look at press releases, and you need to aim for about 500 words. You need to grab their attention with a catchy headline. So the email subject line also needs to be catchy. I receive an awful lot of emails that say things like new release from or news from Joe Blogs, which doesn't really make me want to click on it and open it. So you need to have something that's going to attract their attention, make them think there's something they simply must find out more about. So for example, WeAreBiz launches to help businesses reignite and grow. Local wine company increases sales during lockdown. Unemployed couple start up fruit and veg delivery business during pandemic. These are just some of the examples, because your press release might be absolutely brilliant, but if you don't have a catchy headline, then the journalist isn't going to be terribly interested and your press release may be ignored. So as I've said before, the first paragraph is absolutely crucial. That needs to contain the hook of the story. And then that's when the journalist will decide whether they're going to read on. Don't describe the company as unique or best, as this tends to be off-putting. Quotes can be used. They add great interest to the press release, but avoid quotes with saying how marvelous or how sensational the company is, as this loses credibility. A website address, try and include that early on, because the journalist may want to look at the website to get more information, and it also reminds them to include it in the publication. Also, contact details, your email address, your phone number, website, social media handles. These are all good things to include. Also check the punctuation and spelling, and use subheads to break up the text. Now, anything technical or any web links or any additional information could be put in a short notes to editors in a paragraph at the bottom of the press release, but make sure this isn't longer than the press release itself. So you've got your press release. So now it's time to look at photographs. Now, photographs are a very important part of PR programs. And in my experience, if you send a high quality photograph with your press release, this greatly increases the chances of publication. But you see, journalists are sent an awful lot of rubbish pictures. I have seen things like lamps coming out of the back of people's head, things out of a focus, people's heads cut off. You know, it needs to be a very good photograph, and the composition needs to be in keeping with whatever the subject is of your press release. So the best idea, if at all possible, is to get a professional to take the photographs, because these photographs can then be used on websites, social media, blogs, and so on. So you've got your press release, you've got your photograph, so it's now time to send it out. So you need to make sure you send the press release and photograph to the right publication. So for example, if you're writing a story about men's boxer shorts, you wouldn't send it to Cage and Avery Birds. You also need to do some research as to the named individual to send it to. And you can normally find that out by looking at the website or on the masthead of the printed publication and finding out who the named journalist is you should send the information to. You also need to send the information at the right time. So monthly magazines work an awfully long time ahead, unlike websites and newspapers. If you're planning a virtual event of some kind, that often may need to be sent out very far ahead. So you've sent out your press release, you've sent out your photograph. So as with any new business pitch, you then need to follow it up. So you could follow this up with an email to start with, and if you can, by telephone. Find out whether they've received the information. Is it of interest? Do they need anything more? On the other hand, the journalist may contact you for information, and in which case you need to get back to them quickly so that you meet their deadline. So what happens after that? The journalist then writes up the article in a publication online, and an awful lot of people will see that, including your prospective customers, and that's what we're aiming for. So now I'm going to talk a bit about working with clients. So I devise PR campaigns to meet my clients' aims and objectives, and this is carried out over a long period of time. I then research interesting and positive things about their company, which I then turn into newsworthy stories. And these are then sent out to carefully targeted journalists. And by that, I mean national and local newspapers and websites. Different journalists work on the printed publication as opposed to the websites, bloggers, freelance journalists and influencers, men's and women's and men's magazines. Now, during COVID-19, this sector has suffered greatly, but people still read magazines on digital platforms. And in fact, the sector has seen a bit of a recovery with some new launches. Also, trade, technical and specialist magazines, printed and online, celebrity magazines, TV and radio stations, and social media. I interact with journalists on social media platforms and engage with them and communicate with them on those as well. So the secret of all this, and the secret of the PR professional, is knowing who's who in the media. So I work from a huge database of journalists, and over the years, I've developed relationships with key journalists. So it's got to the point that they contact me to see if I've got a story for them. So other PR activities, an awful lot of people think that all PR is just sending out a press release. There's a lot more to it than that. So these are just some of the other services that I do. So I co-script my articles from written and Word article for a client, which comes out tomorrow. I answer press inquiries. So do they need any more additional information? Do they need an interview? Do they need additional photographs supplied? I also organize interviews for clients on the radio, over the phone, Zoom, etc. I find celebrities to work with them, local dignitaries, local MPs, mayors, and so on. I organize competitions and readers' offers. I research speaking opportunities for them. At the moment, that's on Zoom. Also, virtual event planning, virtual exhibitions. I provide PR support for my clients when they attend virtual exhibitions. So what is the result of all this activity? Well, your company and what it does appears in the media in a very positive light. And this reaches an awful lot of people, including your existing and your potential new customers. So now we're going to talk about how you measure the value of PR. This is something I'm always asked about. People always ask me, well, how can I quantify PR? Well, there's several ways of doing that. So first of all, if the article has a phone number or website, how many responses did you get? How many hits did the website get at the time of the coverage? Also, you can work out what the advertising equivalent would have been, online or in print, had you purchased advertising the same space as the coverage. And it's generally thought that editorial is worth 3 times as much as the amount of advertising because it's written by a journalist objectively in their publication. Then, of course, there's the number of readers, the circulation, the distribution figures, and also how many visitors does the website get, how many page views per month. Also, social media platforms, as I've said before, the journalists will very often put the coverage into their social media. So then you'll be seen by their followers and also the subscribers of their e-newsletters. So this opens up the audience to a much bigger number of people. Then, of course, there's general awareness. Somebody phones you and says, I know who you are because I read about you online. I heard you on the radio. So now I'm going to actually give you some examples of a press coverage and how much they're worth. So this article appeared at the end of last year on behalf of my client Trident Films, half page in the Times newspaper. And this is worth in the region of £30,000 in advertising equivalent, and it reached 1.04 million readers in print and online. This article appeared online again on behalf of Trident Films. This appeared this year. And this website has 1.5 billion monthly page views and 179 million monthly unique browsers. When we talk locally, this is a local lifestyle magazine, Surrey Life. And this one-page feature on behalf of Kish Madazia Mindfulness Coach is worth
I can't come. I'm busy.
£4,000 and reached a readership of 460,000, 49,000 visitors on the website, and over 70,000 followers on Twitter. So to sum up, what are the advantages of long-term PR? Well, imagine the scene. You actually contact your prospect and you tell them about yourself and what you do, and they say, I know all about it. I know all about you because I read about you online and I heard you on the radio. You sound like the sort of people I could do business with. So that concludes the formal part of my presentation. And if you would like any more information, please do contact me. I also offer a free initial consultation and we can talk through what you're looking for. So now I think we're going to turn it over to question and answers. And so I'll pass it back to Rob. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. Yeah, so I mean, does anyone have any questions for Jackie?
I stuck them all into silence, Rob.
I do. That was really good, Jackie. Thank you. I guess from a small business perspective, the thing that always comes into my mind with regards to running a campaign is the cost of doing so. I know it's the $64 million question, but I mean, what sort of costs budgetary wise should we be looking at in order to work with you in terms of perhaps we're bringing you, well, I'll give you a real example. I'm wanting to bring a new product to market and I know where my strengths and weaknesses are. And I think the PR side of what I do isn't very good. So what would be the cost of working with you in order to promote a new product?
Well, that's, as you say, that is a very difficult question because I would need to look at the product itself and who you're aiming for and work out a campaign, a program for you. But if we were going to just do a one-off project, you'd be looking probably at 1 or 2 days work. And I would then calculate how much the ideas would take. But I work to a day rate of £300 a day for small businesses.
Okay. Brilliant. Any more questions? Questions from anyone else?
I have one, but I'm just trying to frame it.
Go for it.
So it seems to me that it isn't just about one prong, is it? So just getting an article in the newspaper. So all those things you're talking about, what would be the minimum really? Would it be press and social media and a speaking engagement, or?
Well, what generally happens with my current clients who are small businesses, they already have their website up there, they already have their social media in place. So I just then dovetail the PR into that. So with one of them, I'm managing their Twitter, for example, and then I'm posting information on their Twitter and their Facebook, as well as sending it off to the media. So we're dovetailing all the activity together. But as I say, most small businesses will have those in place already. So I'm just adding to that, and I'm getting them coverage in the press, in the media, which will add value to what they have already and raise their awareness even more. Does that help?
It does, yes. So, so it's a bigger thing than just one prong, as I say. It's about a coordinated attack, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. To get the maximum activity, the maximum. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, I think yeah, I mean, it's fascinating, but I think you're so right. I mean, I've worked with clients before where you, like you said, it's the so what test, and then once you've got a good story, I guess there's a good story, it could be sold, you know, whether it's radio or on, you know, local press or what have you. It's getting that good story, isn't it? You know.
Yes, you have to identify. And the problem is when people are working inside their business, they don't see the story.
No.
Because they're so familiar with it, they don't realize that they can't recognize their achievements. They often need a person from the outside to say, well, look, this is really interesting what you're doing here, you know.
And is that something you help businesses out on if they've got, because I mean, I can imagine what I think is a good story. Someone might say, well, you know, so what? I go, but it's great. But I mean, is that sort of thing you can help with people, with businesses, to look at their sort of the stories they think and look at how, you know, do the so what test, I guess, you know. Yeah.
Oh, definitely, yes. And then I will then have a chat to them over the phone or Zoom or whatever, and then we'll chat to what they've been doing, and then I'll say, well, that would be good, we'll do a press release on that, we'll do a press release on that. That's really, really interesting, you know. A lot of them will go, really, you really think that's interesting? But it is to outsiders, you know. But as I say, if you're working inside your business so much, you might not recognize that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, one quick thing just to add is that I've worked with PR agents before, and from a website point of view, it's brilliant for SEO. We did, you know, I spent with clients months and months trying to get their SEO ranking up. They had an article, they worked with a PR agent, and within a month, you know, they were mentioned everywhere. So from an SEO point of view, PR is brilliant, and you know, for £300, well worth it. So
Thank you.
my last thing to add on it. So yeah, perfect. Over to you, Dave, I think.
Any more questions for Jackie?
Only that I'd like to take her up on her offer of a consultation.
Oh, okay, Charles, no problem.
I will drop you a line shortly.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so thank you, Jackie. I've just checked the subscriptions for the YouTube channel. We've had one, so thank you for that. If any of you would like to subscribe to the YouTube channel, you will be able to find a copy of the presentation there later this week. And if you'd like to see previous presentations, you will be able to see those as well.
Dave, your link to the YouTube channel isn't showing up in my chat.
Okay.
I don't know if you posted it in a breakout room or something, but if you could perhaps.
Yep, let me, that's good feedback. So let me do that again. How's that?
Got it. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, so that concludes our meeting today. Us on social media. We've got a Twitter and LinkedIn and Instagram account, and like I say, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Our next meeting is on Wednesday the 7th of April, 11 a.m. and Tracy is going to be from Your Vegan Bookkeeper is going to be giving our doing our webinar, Small Businesses, Big Questions.